Good evening, everyone. Welcome to This is Politics with Lucifari Vera. Tonight we are going to talk about the incident with KARMELO Anthony down in Texas, in a suburb outside of Dallas. And we're going to look at this through a different lens than everyone wants to seem to look at it. That's what we're going to do today on This is Politics. I started to do this on a reaction video, but it's going to be kind of the same but different. So see you soon.
It is not the Republicans' fault, it's the Democrats' fault. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. I am bringing those high prices down and bringing them down very fast.
Well, good evening to any that come in and watch this episode. I just want to start off by saying anybody who looks at this KARMELO Anthony situation and one doesn't see it as pure racism in parts of our country in America, who wants to blame black people in other parts of the country in America, who just does not understand the black position in America needs to just shut their fucking mouth. But you got everybody that wants to say something. And then you have those that represent. And then you have those that got their high profile jobs, who got their conservative audiences, that's afraid to lose one fucking view to stand up for their people. You want to know why? Because just like back in the slave days, just like back in the Jim Crow days, there are black people who are not black people's peoples. There's always been Uncle Toms and house niggas and turncoats and everything else amongst black people. Well, white people have the same thing. Oh, yeah, I get it. Yeah, white people do have the same thing. But white people don't have the problem or problems that black people have in this country. And we need to get back to the day till we understand that this is a black problem. This is a problem that black people face in America. It's not black and people of color. It's people whose ethnicity is labeled African American, black, or nigger. It's not the Chinese. I will say a lot of the Latinos share our struggle, but that depends on the Latinos. Because there's a lot of Latin descent people in here that are just as good as white people when it comes to America. But the Puerto Ricans that grew up in the hood with us, they got it bad too. The Mexicans are cool long as they working. Here we thought this during last year, we thought this whole immigration thing going on, so many of us before they started covering it thought it had anything to do with Mexicans. The Mexicans are old news. They're cool. It's a war on black people. The black people coming from African countries that happen to be Islamic. And now we have Islamophobes. We have people out there that straight up are talking about Sharia law taking over their countries everywhere. But when did that start? When did that start? That didn't start when we had Islamic people and people from the Mideast working the 7-Elevens, owning the 7-Elevens. No, we didn't have that problem. We had shit that was said about them, but hey, it wasn't the problem. We didn't have that problem when they started buying up gas stations all across America. Every time you go into a gas station, they got that smell. Somebody sitting there with a turban on their head. They weren't taking over our country then. When you're in college And you got those Arabic teachers, and they're teaching certain classes. Living rich, owning businesses. No, they weren't taking over our country then. When I was in college, I had a couple Mideastern teachers. They were treated like white people. In fact, the only place that those Mideastern people have a problem is if they live next to Israel. Because Israel has a terrorist in charge right now. He hates Lebanese people. He hates Iranian people. He just hates all Islamic people. But here in America, we have a war on black people, and it's brewing again. Because I don't think anybody's looking at the situation at hand the way they should be looking at the situation at hand. Everybody's focused on the different stories that came out. And now that there's been a trial and truth that's came out, because there was different stories, because we all know how the police and investigators want to keep you guessing for so long, that there was a story going around that the kid fell on the knife. There's another story going around that the kids jumped him. But what did happen was a black kid sat in a tent that I believe was full of white kids. I've been searching for that information. It just says visiting team's tent. But regardless, you had KARMELO Anthony, who is a black kid who sat in a tent to get out of the rain. Who cares? Do you think he really had a problem because he played for the other team? Or do you think Metcalf attacked him because he didn't want him there because he didn't look like the other team? Let's look at the reality of this. Let's stop missing the damn ball all the time, so things don't get, oh my God. Things get lost at sea. Because what it boils down to is a black kid sat in a tent to get out of the rain, and there was another team in there. He didn't push nobody out of their seat. There was room in that tent for him. But then you get all the white kids that surround him, and one that wants to be the macho man and says, "What are you doing here?" And something had to be said, because if you sit down to get out of the rain and somebody just comes up to you and says, "What are you doing here?" you're going to say, I'm just sitting down for a minute until the rain stops. You're not going to say, "Put your hands on me and find out." There was more said. That wouldn't even make any sense. It's pouring down rain. You and your team sitting under a tent. Black kid comes to sit down on the tent. You ask him, all right, why are you sitting down? Put your hands on me and find out. Come on, spin this. Because that's how they're spinning y'all. Just like these old fidget spinners. There's no fucking way that's what happened. He was told to get the fuck out of there. Guaranteed. By more than one person. Leave. Leave or get put out. Yeah, put your hands on me and find out what happens. That makes sense. I've been in those situations as a teenager. Didn't end up stabbing nobody. But got accused of starting a race fight at our school the next day. I didn't start it. I just told my niggas what happened. They weren't happy. But the biggest problem we have in this country is the Uncle Toms and the house niggas, and I'm sick of them. Because they're more concerned with their bottom line, the people they work for, the network they're on, their own platform. And then you got people like Stephen A. Smith, who wants to sit there and talk about his platform, his platform. I own this platform. I can say what I want on this platform. If y'all believe that, you're fucking nuts. If you think what Stephen A. Smith says on Straight Shooter cannot affect his job at ESPN, you done lost your mind. What that man says at a grocery store could affect his job at ESPN. And I've been listening to a couple of these people talk. And we're going to listen to them too. But first, let's look at this incident. Let's just totally reverse the situation. Let's reverse it. Let's say there was a tent with black kids in it. And I'm going to assume that the tent he sat in was majority white kids, if not all white kids, because they're hiding that information. But let's say there was a tent full of black kids for a team, and a white kid stopped and sat down and got out of the ring and got approached, which would not happen. That would not happen. Because in those type of situations, black people were just not built that way. That's white people shit. That is not black people shit. Black people like, come on, get on up out the ring. But let's just say a white kid sat in there and some black kid came up to him and said, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm just sitting down to get out of the ring. And the black kid said, nah, you need to get out of here. And I'm going to put you out of here. And the white kid says, if you put your hands on me and find out what happens. And that black kid comes and pushes him on his shoulders down on the ground. And that white kid pulls out a knife and stabs that black kid. That white kid is going home a free man. Guaranteed. We done seen it happen so many times. They're sitting there talking about KARMELO Anthony provoked him by saying to put his hands on him. What about all the black kids that get killed that don't provoke no one? Since Stephen A. Smith wants to bring up Chicago and black on black crimes, what about Trayvon Martin walking from the store to buy a soda and get shot and killed and approached for no reason? What about Mike Brown? What about Ferguson? What about all the black people that's been killed in this country since the very independence of this country? White people have been walking free and will continue to walk free. You see, the stand your ground law was not made for us. We can try to use it. And if everything's perfect, maybe we'll get it. But we're going to have to be handcuffed, probably put in jail, and prove our innocence. And I don't give a fuck. That's exactly what I do. And if you threaten me, then they want to talk about reasonable person and reasonable action. When did that start coming up in Stand Your Ground? I felt threatened, so I shot him. He was coming towards me, so I shot him. He was being aggressive, so I shot him. You know how many black people over the last decade have been gunned down by white people because they said they felt threatened? Here you got a black kid who was actually pushed to the ground, pulled out his knife and defended himself. He just got sentenced to 35 years. How the fuck? Oh, hey, bestie, how you? How the fuck does this happen? In Texas, of all places. That there's all this nonsense around self-defense. In Texas? That's as stand your ground as it gets down there. This kid was pushed out of his chair. But let's look at what some people have to say. Let's start with we're going to start with Stephen A. Smith.
And fell onto Carmelo's knife trying to attack him because the knife is 3.5 inches. The cut was only 2. Lou, if I'm stabbing you, why am I going halfway with a knife blade that's only 3.5 inches? You fell onto my.
Why the hell am I buffering?
You know, the kid, he was
Boy's knife.
All right,
The
starting
knife is
Dr.
3.5
Umar-
inches.
Dr.
The
Umar
cut was only
Johnson
2.
there.
Loon, if I'm stabbing you, why am I going halfway with a knife blade that's only 3.5 inches? You fell onto my knife. Regardless, Loon, do you really think those 2 black boys who fell in that white boy's knife?
Time out, bro. I can't do it. I got to get my hair cut. My barber here he fell on a knife. There ain't no human being on planet Earth out of 21 witnesses said that he fell on a knife. KARMELO Anthony's defense isn't arguing that he fell on a knife. Nobody's saying that these black people cannot take accountability for nothing. Now the boy done fell on somebody's knife.
Welcome to the special edition of Straight Shooter, coming at you as I love to do, at least twice a week over the airways of YouTube, of course. Of course, you know my POTUS show is every Wednesday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over the airways of Sirius XM POTUS Radio. That was Officer Tatum responding to Dr. Umar Johnson, who was talking about what transpired with the whole KARMELO Anthony situation. You know, the kid. He was 17 at the time. He's 19 now. He was recently convicted of first-degree murder based off of, because in April of 2025, he fatally stabbed a fellow high school student, high school athlete, Austin Metcalf, in the chest during an altercation at a track meet in Frisco, Texas. A jury convicted Anthony of murder on June 9th and 10th of this year, rejecting his self-defense claim and sentenced him to 35 years in prison. Now, as we all know, I definitely had my reservations about that sentencing. I remember the case involving Casey Allison, who in May of 2022 was also a Texas high school student and fatally stabbed a classmate, Joe Ramirez, during a confrontation in a Belton high school bathroom. He ultimately was acquitted of murder and manslaughter, but convicted of criminally negligent homicide, where he was sentenced in June of 2025 to a maximum 10 years in prison. So he murdered somebody, he's getting 10 years. KARMELO Anthony murdered somebody, he's getting 35 years. And that discrepancy has a lot of people in an uproar and what have you. Apparently one of those people is Dr. Umar Johnson. Now, I listened to what he said there. And let me state this. I respect him. I respect the man. I respect his intelligence. Officer Tatum, I'm not going to emulate you. I'm certainly not going to disrespect Dr. Umar Johnson. I'm not going to call him an idiot or question his intelligence. I will say, however, he's definitely out there with the stuff that he was saying. I heard no evidence of KARMELO Anthony or Austin Metcalf falling into a knife. I heard no evidence of that whatsoever. And there were 21 people, who was considered for the jury. You know, you had your grand jury testimony and all of this other stuff going on. And there was 21 people that were talked to. There were witnesses that were in attendance. Nobody talked about Austin Metcalf falling into a knife. I don't know where that comes from. And obviously because of how severe the penalty was, 35 years in prison, we're going to take into account history from an historical perspective, from a racist perspective, and we're not going to be uncomfortable with the discrepancy that exists between somebody like Casey Allison compared to a KARMELO Anthony. I got that part. But that doesn't give us a license to then turn around and to just come up with stuff that might have been, as opposed to listening to the evidence that was actually disseminated and making reaching a conclusion based off of that. KARMELO Anthony was quoted as saying to Austin Metcalf, put your hands on me and find out what's going to happen. To be clear, he was in a tent because it was raining outside at a track meet. And he was in a visiting team's tent, not his own. And Austin Metcalf was one of the people that walked up to him and said, yo, man, you need to go to your own spot. You don't need to be up in here.
Why?
And according to witnesses and KARMELO Anthony himself, he said, put your hands on me and see what's going to happen.
That don't make no
According
sense.
to a coach, in the aftermath of the incident, he walked up to KARMELO Anthony and asked him what happened. And KARMELO Anthony said, hey, he put his hands on me, so I stabbed him. So he told you what he was going to do before he did it. Then he ended up doing it. And now we're hearing all of these conspiracy theorists coming out here talking about this stuff, ignoring the evidence. Now, again, Officer Tatum, I'm not going to go your route because we can simply disagree. We don't have to engage in insulting anybody here. You've got people that are emotionally invested because they see a system that they think is inequitable and unequal. And as a result, they react accordingly because yet another black kid is going down with a level of severity that isn't being shared by somebody who isn't black, but comes across as having committed the same crime. Now, there's different circumstances. One involved a fight that both volunteered to confront one another about. One was getting the better of the other. Ultimately, a stabbing took place. A killing occurred. And as a result of that killing, Allison got 10 years in prison because of criminally negligent homicide as opposed to manslaughter or murder. KARMELO Anthony went the route of self-defense through the advice of his lawyers and ultimately ended up being convicted of first-degree murder. As far as I'm concerned, it wasn't a jury of his peers because there was nobody black on the jury. I got all of that. There's nobody black on the jury. That's not a jury of your peers, even though there's no law that stipulates your peers means that your ethnicity has to be shared. I do understand that. But I think it would be nice if you're going to call it a jury of your peers, that it needs to be some people up there that look a little bit like you, that shares your pigmentation, your hue, your ethnicity. I think that's fair, in my opinion. But again, no laws were violated in terms of the makeup of that jury. Having said all of that, the reason why this point is relevant right now is because of a very uncomfortable truth. The uncomfortable truth is that, once again, we find ourselves dropping the ball, a little bit, dare I say. His lawyer, who was that going to be? Did we do our due diligence? The makeup of the jury, did we do our due diligence? The charges that were ultimately going to be filed against him, what he was indicted for, what he was going to be prosecuted for. Did we have the right people in place to make sure that that wasn't putting KARMELO Anthony at a considerable advantage? Did we do all of those things? Or were we a bit late to the party in that regard?
Late to the party.
And considering that one could argue that we were late to the party in that regard, for those who want to support KARMELO Anthony, who want to act like a crime wasn't committed, who want to act like he was completely provoked, instead of bringing up the fact that he had no business having a knife at a track meet, instead of acknowledging the fact that he was in no real perceived danger in terms of his life being threatened,
he was pushed to the ground.
in terms of acknowledging the fact that under no circumstances, based on the evidence of what has happened, did it warrant him stabbing somebody in the chest?
Pause for a second here. Because we're losing focus of what stand your ground is. Stand your ground is about being in fear of your life. And you're the judge of that. Not the circumstances. Just somebody getting hype and hollering, walking towards you. You can say you were in fear. So all of this stuff Stephen A. is saying is irrelevant to the situation that happened and how this kid was wrongfully convicted.
If we're going to sit up there and we're going to ignore those things, here's what we can't ignore. Here's what's unavoidable. People are going to bring this up too. Where's all this noise over what happened in Chicago on Juneteenth?
We're not talking about Chicago on Juneteenth.
What's the relevancy for that? The relevancy for that is that we're arguing and going off and expressing hell and fury over the conviction of a guy who acknowledged he admitted he committed the crime. Told the police, it's not alleged, I did it. Because he put his hands on me, so I did it, according to the reports. We've got people all over the place going off, talking about police officers, talking about the court system, talking about the inequity within our legal system, et cetera, et cetera. But
you want to travel to the
39
other
people get
side
shot
of the country
on Juneteenth,
and talk about what happened in Chicago.
6 are killed, and we're not hearing anything.
To justify black men going
Why
to
is
prison.
that? I bring up Juneteenth, ladies and gentlemen, to remind you what Juneteenth is.
What is it, Steve?
It's a U.S. holiday that commemorates the end of slavery in the United States.
Bullshit.
That's what Juneteenth is.
That's what it is to you.
Juneteenth, June 19th, Emancipation Proclamation, issued by Abraham Lincoln in January of 1863.
1863. And when was the Galveston, Texas?
This is what we're talking about. June 19th, 1865, 2 years ago, Union General, reading from here, Union General
Pause.
Gordon Granger.
Because this is what makes me mad when people start talking about Juneteenth, the most ignorant fucking holiday I ever heard. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1963. Two years later in Galveston, Texas, the people rode up and let some slaves know that they were free. On June 19th, 1965. 2 years later. 2 years later. And just to be sure, yes, what I thought. 6 months before Juneteenth, the 13th Amendment was signed. So, in 1963, you had the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the slaves. But there had to be an amendment wrote because the Emancipation Proclamation was really just a peace treaty to end the war. When Congress enacted January of 1965, they signed the 13th Amendment, but the slaves were already free. 6 months later, some people come galloping in Galveston, Texas to tell some slaves they were free. Did they arrest some lawbreakers? No. Were there still slaves in America? Yes. Were there still slaves in America working off because they were sharecroppers and they had to use equipment that didn't belong to them? So they made it to where they could never get out of debt and they were always enslaved? Yes. Were we not tarred and feathered and lynched and hung for 100 years to follow? Yes. So what the fuck are we celebrating Juneteenth for? Ain't nothing changed for black people on Juneteenth, 1965. Except a couple Negroes that didn't know they was free in Texas. Listen, it's when I get down to the same argument of the Bill of Rights versus the 13th through 27th Amendment. Those amendments are there to deal with social events of the time. Most of them were not meant to be indefinite, which is why we're going through the whole Voters' Rights Act that we're going through right now. Because only the first 10 of the Constitution, the first 10 amendments are your Bill of Rights. Everything else was kind of like free-flowing governing. Social issues to kind of stop them from happening. Which is why in 2013, the second pillar of the Voters' Rights Act was basically abolished. Because they said, it's not 1965 no more. White people love black people. There's no reason to have a law that says black people can vote. And look what they're doing now with gerrymandering. And come here in a few months, the Supreme Court's going to rule on whether we're going to have a Voters' Rights Act anymore. Because again, social issues, amendments, and laws passed for those things are not meant to be indefinite. You ain't got to believe me. Just listen to the Supreme Court justices. I would have them queued up, but I didn't plan on playing it today. But you always got these niggas that want to sit there and protect their own bottom line and sit there and try to point fingers back at black people. What the hell does KARMELO Anthony have to do with some niggas busting up in Chicago? Nothing. We know we got a high crime rate in Chicago. We know we got a high crime rate in Memphis. Jackson, Mississippi. Philadelphia. We know all this. But what's the blame for that? Because I could take you back 300 years and tell you what led up to the position that those black people are in those inner cities, especially in the north. It's called they ain't got steak and shit, they ain't got shit. And they're painted as animals. And not animals in as what we all are animals, as in animals that are just disgusting criminals. Where they're actually living in an area where every day is a fight for survival. And Stephen A. always want to sit there and act like he knows something about that because he's from Hollis, Queens. Hollis, Queens ain't South Side. Hollis, Queens is where you go hide out to get out of trouble when you're from the South Side. Everywhere in Queens ain't bad. I got an aunt and uncle that were multimillionaires. They live in Jamaica States, Queens. Miss me with this bullshit he talking about. Chicago, bringing that up because you always ready to point the finger back at your own people. But y'all love this man so damn much. You know what I see in Stephen A. Smith? I used to like him. He's misogynistic. He's selfish, condescending, only does for people if it pushes his position forward for his own aggrandizement. And uses athletes for clout to stay relevant. And then sits there and has all them racist ass people on his goddamn show. And got mad when Matt Barnes pointed it out. And Matt Barnes just the type of cat like, look, man, hey, man, it is, look, you know what I'm saying? My bad, man. But Matt Barnes knows exactly where he stands with Stephen A. Smith. Talk to Molly Quorum on an honest day about Stephen A. Smith. Or what's the sister name that was on the herd? When she wanted to come to First Take, he said, hell no. He don't want no woman with no voice. Because he's misogynistic as they come. And one day I'm going to do an episode on him to prove it all. But I've been watching for some time now. Stephen A's all about Stephen A. I don't know how much more we're going to listen to him.
Arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced that enslaved people in Texas were free. This date is what became known as Juneteenth. You know how as black folks...
And nobody, I don't give a goddamn who you are. If there was a handful of black people in this country that even knew what the fuck Juneteenth was before the 2010s and up. Nobody heard about that shit until Donald Trump started making jokes about it or whatever the hell he did. Then everybody had to act like they knew what was up. Wasn't nobody celebrating that shit. Juneteenth. Who the hell would have a goddamn holiday named after broken English from people who weren't allowed by law to learn to read or be literate? Juneteenth. Yeah, we'll give y'all that. You don't hear it called Martin Luther King Day, do you? Man, that's Martin Luther King. No. You don't hear it called Black Folk History Month. But we got to call this Juneteenth. With an F. It's a goddamn insult.
We sit up there and we talk about it's Malcolm X Boulevard, it's Martin Luther King Boulevard, and that's usually where violence takes place. That's what they're saying about Juneteenth right now. 39 people.
They say it about every day when it comes to our people.
6 killed. And what are we saying? You got more people arguing about Carmelo Anthony than this. And I'm not getting into, you know what? It's black on black. Wait a minute. White people kill white people. Hispanics kill Hispanics. The people you live with, the people you live amongst, the people you live around. That's where violence usually take place amongst one another. I know that. I don't care about that. I care about us, our community right now, as it pertains to this subject. What we gonna do, peoples? I'm talking to black people.
Okay, so
what we gonna do?
What you want to do? You want to go cure Chicago to prove
Barack
your point
Obama
about Carmelo Anthony?
Had his presidential center opened this past Friday. We all celebrating it.
A library.
And we got nothing to say about 39 black folks, 39 people rather getting shot, 6 fatally. How about this? Let me read some numbers to you. Because I think it's important.
What do you want? You
It's
want
only
Trump
right.
to send in the National Guard? Is that what you
Chicago.
begging for, Steve?
In the year 2024, recorded 580 homicides in that 1 year alone, with black residents accounting for roughly 3/4 to 4/5 of the victims.
We understand
The racial safety gap remains stark. The University of Chicago Crime Lab reports that in 2025, black Chicagoans had a homicide rate of nearly 40 per 100,000 residents.
I'm not going to sit here and listen to this man blame black people anymore for a situation that happened in Texas where a black kid defended himself against a white kid that pushed him to the ground. See, this is the shit we got to deal with. People like him is how people like Colin Kaepernick was able to get blackballed from the NFL. Because all they got to do is go to their house, nigga, and say, light them up. That's what they do, man. That's what they do. And you doing all this shit in a time where you got a moron president that's sending soldiers in the cities. Not many people's in Chicago. I don't think you can go anywhere in the world where that many people live in poverty and not have some crime rate. Some homicides. Gang violence. What you think it's like in the slums of Africa, where they starving? Or anywhere in the world where they're starving? You just want to act like this stuff don't happen in the United States of America. Like these people got all the stuff that they're supposed to have. That they can go to the grocery store and fill up their cart. They can go to the gas station and fill up their tank, if they even have a car. That they got their house a 2-car garage. This is why I love Bobby Kennedy so much, man. Not the president, John F. Kennedy, his little brother. Because he went to these places. He went to Detroit. He went to Bed-Stuy. He went to Memphis. And he seen what was going on. And said, we need to change this. We need to bring money to these communities. We need to rebuild these communities and let the people of these communities rebuild it. All that reconstruction that was going to happen in Detroit, it was going to be Detroit people that did it, not contractors they brought in. That's why Bobby Kennedy got murdered. Because he really seen the struggle of the black man and was going to do something about it. And then you got people out there talking, do you know how terrible it would be for black people if somebody like Stephen A. Smith became president? Y'all talking about Stephen A. for president? Yeah, it'd probably be good for your African Americans that make fucking $1 million. But he's a brilliant head not connected to a black body. He be right in there doing what the goddamn white man wanted him to do. He'd just be a black white man. Remind me, he'd be like one of those judges that just hate niggas in his courtroom. I knew one in Mansfield, Ohio, Judge Payton. He's dead now. But he ain't like black people. And he's black himself. He's the hardest on black people. That's Stephen A. Smith. But I'm going to move on from him because I'm going to do a whole episode on Stephen A. Smith and I'm going to pull all his bullshit.
He made some mistakes. I think Austin Beck.
He put his hands on me. I told him not to. He put his hands on me.
Now let's stop. You see what Carmelo Anthony uttered. He's crying. He's distraught. He said he put his hands on me. I told him not to. He said he. He didn't say they. So for everybody saying
you don't
Carmelo
have to
Anthony
get jumped
was
to
getting
defend
jumped,
yourself.
Carmelo Anthony doesn't even say that. What's up, fam? This your boy Cut to the Chase TV. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and be sure to share this video. I got some news for you Negroes today. The Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf video was just released to the public and it proves everybody lied. Y'all remember when he was on trial? Carmelo Anthony supporters was saying they seen the video. He was surrounded. He was jumped. He was damn near mauled to death by the Metcalf twins. The new video proves that was a lie. And you guys remember when an old white lady came out and said Carmelo Anthony didn't kill Austin Metcalf. Austin fell on the knife. The video proves that was a lie. See, I'm not pro Carmelo Anthony. I'm not pro Austin Metcalf.
He could have fell towards the knife because he pushed.
Yes, I get Carmelo Anthony is black. Yes, I'm black. Yes, I have more in common with Carmelo Anthony than Austin Metcalf, but none of that matters. I just care about the murder.
But
was Carmelo Anthony
meant to stab
justified?
Because he don't know what more was going to happen once that boy got
it's
on
a
top
sad
of him.
situation. I think both of these young men acted like jackasses. It was petty. It was juvenile. I think Austin Metcalf made some mistakes. I think Carmelo Anthony made some mistakes. I think Austin Metcalf acted stupid. I just think Carmelo Anthony acted stupider. That's all I'm saying. And if I'm a Carmelo Anthony supporter, I feel ashamed that this video has been released. I feel used, I feel abused, I look like a fool, and I feel like a fool. I felt like everything I was told about this case was a lie. Time and time again, we seen people go to the courthouse, we see them come out the courthouse. We asked them, what did you guys see on the video? And all Carmelo Anthony supporters said the same thing. He was getting jumped, he was getting mauled, he was on the brink of death, they was kicking his ass. He had no choice but to use deadly force, because he didn't use deadly force, it's a chance he might not be here. And everybody was believing that. Everybody was hopeful. Everybody was saying maybe Carmelo Anthony do got a self-defense claim. He was getting beat by 4 people. They was grabbing on him, throwing him up and down the bleachers. He pulled out the knife and went to work. That's what Carmelo Anthony should have done. That's what all his supporters was thinking. Well, now that this video has been released, they gotta walk it all back.
No, they don't.
They got egg on their face. They gotta admit that they was wrong. I know it's hard. I know it's hard. Because you wanted Carmelo Anthony to be innocent.
It's not hard because all it has to be is one person
Anthony.
threatening you.
He's a black man. The justice system is not always fair. Black people just hoping for a win. Hell, white people always get a win in the justice system. That's how black people looking at it. And now white people is looking at it like this. Y'all racist. Austin Metcalf was unarmed. Yeah, he punched Carmelo Anthony or pushed him, whatever you want to call it, but he don't deserve to die. I gotta agree with that. I don't think Austin Metcalf deserves a death sentence because he pushed Carmelo Anthony and said, get out the tent. Ain't that what kids do? Now I'm gonna play this video.
I'm done with Play what video? Go
We
ahead.
gonna break it down, and we gonna come to the conclusion who was right, who was wrong. Y'all know who I'm leaning toward. Let's watch the video. Now let's stop it right there. Look up under that orange tent. That is where Carmelo Anthony is sitting at. And at this time of the video, he's getting approached by Austin Metcalf. Austin Metcalf is talking to him. Now, all Carmelo Anthony supporters were saying Carmelo Anthony was getting jumped. He was on the brink of death. He had no choice but to defend himself. That don't look like jumping to me. It's too calm under the tent. See, when you jump somebody, it's chaos. I done been jumped before. I done jumped niggas before. When you get jumped or you jumping somebody, everybody moving real fast. Everybody under that tent is gonna scatter. You don't see that yet. So that shows me Carmelo Anthony isn't being jumped. I'm just saying. Let's continue. Now let's stop it right there. Let's stop it. As you continue watching the video, you see Austin Metcalf either punch Carmelo Anthony in the face, pushed him in the face, and you see Carmelo Anthony lunge forward, and Austin Metcalf collapse, and Carmelo Anthony haul ass out from under the tent. That's what you see, and that is Carmelo Anthony running. Now, I don't think him running really determines guilt. You know, you just stab somebody, you panicking, you're freaking out, you're dazed, you're confused. You trying to get the hell out of Dodge. That's all I'm saying. So, hey, you can't really say it's guilt. It just doesn't look good. What I seen in that video, it just doesn't look good. And I'm going to tell you Carmelo Anthony's problem. I think he was a little too quick with the knife. I think we came out a little too quick. You clearly see Austin Metcalf put his hands on him, but you see Carmelo Anthony pulls out the knife immediately and stabs him. I can't say that's self-defense. See, to claim self-defense, if somebody doesn't have a weapon, you gotta be willing to take an ass whooping.
No,
Carmelo Anthony didn't hit the ground.
No, you don't.
He just
Shut
stumbled
up.
down a few bleachers.
Shut the fuck up.
He got pushed.
Shut the fuck up. I'm done with this dude. He don't know what the hell he's talking about. Who's this dude? Cut to the Chase TV. Dumbass motherfucker. See, what you got here is niggas that don't understand stand your ground laws. That's what you got. So obviously Carmelo Anthony has some shitty ass lawyers. Because if the roles was reversed and that was a black kid that pushed a fucking white kid to the ground and the white kid stabbed in the fence, it would have been justified. We see it all the time. But we got house niggas and Uncle Toms like Cut to the Chase and Stephen A. Smith and many more. I didn't want to look up no more because I get tired of hearing them. The moral of the story is it was raining outside. This young kid, black male, sat down under a tent to get out of the rain and was approached by some white kids. He don't have to be jumped. You don't know. That video doesn't show what them other kids are saying. That video barely shows any fucking thing. And it was rumors for people saying he got jumped by multiple people because they didn't release the video then. But what is true? Carmelo Anthony sat down minding his own business under a tent to get out of the rain. A team tent. And was approached by teammates of that other team We don't know all the words were exchanged, but something made him say, if you put your hands on me, you're going to find out. And we don't know if originally he was going to stab him. Maybe he was going to fight him. But when he got pushed by him, he found himself in a defenseless situation and pulled his knife out. Either way, from what we've been told, from what we've been dealing with, for all the black kids and black males that have been killed under this stand your ground law, we see stand your ground there. Period. You don't have to be jumped. You don't even have to be touched. You just got to be threatened. Feel threatened. No one can tell you what fear you're in. And I hope the appellate court does the right thing. But that's my take on This Is Politics with Lucifari Vera. As always, go to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Follow, subscribe. Because content will continue to come.